Hello all, I am currently a Senior Director of Managed Security Services at Entity Data. I manage the Identity and Access Management practice. I'm also a faculty at UT Dallas, where I teach primarily various cybersecurity courses to the graduate students in the School of Management. I'm also a board member of FBI affiliated nonprofit InfraGuard. I serve on advisory board for Collin College, and I'm also a faculty sponsor for UTD Cybersecurity Club. So I think the first three sessions we had touched upon this, so I'm just putting this as a refresher again. These are the 5 primary pillars of zero trust. You need to get a full zero trust, you need to protect all these things: identity, devices, networks, applications and workloads, and data. So what does zero trust do? Zero trust operates through a comprehensive framework that emphasizes strict verification and access control at the protocol, at the policy, and at the platform levels to enhance cybersecurity. So the message is very clear. The previous slide showed the 5 pillars. Here also it shows if you want to get zero trust, you have to get it and you have to apply controls and verification at various levels. One level won't cut it. So you have to make sure you do it at the protocol level, you do it at the policy level, you do it at the platform level in order to get full zero trust. So what does zero trust do? Zero trust basically challenges you to make sure you authenticate every time. And if you're implementing zero trust, you need to make sure that you don't try to take the shortcuts. You don't try to go around and cheat the system, if you will. You have to design your system in such a way so that you are not able to bypass any challenges. Now, some of you might be the proponents of user experience and might come back and say, you know what, that is painful. I have to go authenticate myself. Why do I need to do that? Right? Because if you need to do that, the problem is it is definitely going to slow you down. But for security, that much is an accepted price that you take to make sure that the security is taken care of. That's the reason we go through various things where we use registered devices. If you go through the registered devices, registered networks, you go through the things like micro-segmentation, then you are protected. You've done your due diligence to have a framework which will protect you. So, as I mentioned, zero trust network architecture requires a holistic approach, right? You have to encompass your identity, your device trust, and your network segmentation. And you need to ensure that there is continuous monitoring which has been put in place so that you are able to go through the zero trust architecture, building a zero trust architecture by design. You don't need to go in and then try to add patches, try to add things which will make the architecture as zero trust. It has to follow a holistic approach. Obviously, you need to adhere to NIST framework and focus on protecting your most critical assets. You also want to significantly enhance your security posture, because all those things will help you have the right framework for implementing zero trust. If you're adhering to NIST framework, then you've basically taken care of your due diligence, you're ensuring that you have the right set of controls put in place, you're following the right compliance, you're protecting your most critical assets and you're not exposing it. I think one of the things which we talk about, we were earlier, the best way to protect your critical assets is hide them inside and you protect it. Now we are living in a world where you don't hide your most critical assets. You actually bring it out. Actually, if you look at the word uh, crown jewels, right? Where does the crown jewels sit? They sit on the crown. And is the crown hidden? No, it sits on king's or queen's head. And when you have that crown, that's where the jewels are. That is the thing which is on the biggest display, right? So you need to protect them. Your crown jewels in this age have to be displayed and yet protected. As I tell people, if you go to the Louvre Museum in France, in Paris, the most famous painting there is Mona Lisa. And if you go there, is the Mona Lisa painting hidden in a room where nobody else can go? No. If you go there, you'll find out the Mona Lisa is along with a lot of others in the same room. A lot of people can view it. But if you look at it, there might be millions of cameras which might be protecting that crown jewel. So zero trust, again, it's not a one-time implementation. It's an ongoing process. If you understand that, that will make your zero trust journey that much more smoother. You need to regularly assess and update your ZTNA strategy so that the new threats will come in, new technological advances will come in. Your framework needs to keep up with those technological advances and the new threats, and it needs to modify itself. So, migrating to ZTA is an incremental journey rather than complete overhaul of existing infrastructure. You have to think about putting the zero trust principles in place, and you are not going and just changing the infrastructure and there's no switch which says, okay, I'm now zero trust. Right? NIST recommends that organizations have to do this in a progressive manner. Implement process changes and also technological solutions so that you are not doing this by getting rid of everything. You're slowly and progressively implementing zero trust principles. Obviously, the tagline always still stays, never trust, always verify. Right? That's the foundational principle of zero trust. Right? Every access request needs to be validated as if you're coming in from an untrusted network. Another thing zero trust talks about is what we call it as you are assuming breach. Right? You are treating as if there is a data breach, there's a network breach which has already happened, and we are acting according to that. Right? So you have to assume breach. You don't wait for, means you're already thinking that there is a fire which is already brewing, and your job is to put the fire out. So please make sure that we are taking necessary steps at the design level to put the zero trust principles in place. Another big one is least privilege access. So how do you control who gets access? Right? You just grant the minimum level of access. A lot of times people are given a lot more access than they need. And when they're giving more access than they need, then the problem is they have to suffer because now somebody has additional access than what they need. So we need to ensure that minimum level of access required to be granted is only given. Right? I talked earlier about microsegmentation. It should be as granular as possible. A lot of times companies are doing microsegmentation in such a way that you're down to only you are the only network node on that microsegmented piece of architecture. And obviously, you have to continuously validate and evaluate. If you are entering a building, somebody enters with their badge, right? What if somebody else follows them and that person could be a threat? So there has to be ways to ensure that only one person can get in. No tailgating is allowed, because if tailgating is done and if somebody gets in, that person could be a threat. Same way, electronically digital world as well. If somebody tries to log in using your credentials, or if you share your user ID and password with somebody, and if that person does something wrong, it's your ID. You will be the one who will be held accountable. So if any one of you, a lot of students are listening, if any one of you is sharing your user ID and password with friends or colleagues or whatever, please make sure you're not doing that. So while we're talking about NIST has put together special publication 800-207 for Zero Trust Architecture. Right? It outlines several key logical components, especially it talks about a policy engine, which is the central decision point for access requests. Then you have a policy administrator. And then the last thing is you have a policy enforcement point. So policy administrator is responsible for establishing and terminating communication between a subject and a resource. Well, policy enforcement point is the one which enforces the policy engine decisions onto the resource access. So what is the implementation strategy? Typical core technical components, right? You define your protection surface. You define what needs to be protected. You identify most critical data, assets, applications, services, and this forms your protect surface, right? And obviously your protect surface typically should be smaller than the overall attack surface. Attack surface gets added some of the things which you don't want to protect, but basically get exposed, which adds to your attack surface is definitely larger than what you want your protect surface to be. Right? Map transaction flows. How do you make sure how your traffic is moving across the network? Right? You want to determine how to architect controls, how to enforce policy, etc. Right? You design your network architecture keeping the zero trust principles in mind. Right? You need to develop your granular policies, the 5 W's and a how. Right? Who needs to get access? What do they need access to get? When should they get it? Like, is there a time frame only when they should get the access? Where do they get the access? Why should they get the access? And how do they connect? You're basically granting access tools based on the Kipling method, which is 5 W's and a how. You want to develop those policies where granular enough. You want to monitor and maintain your network, right? You want to make sure there is continuous monitoring and logging of all traffic. You want to deploy the chosen ZTNA components in a reporting only mode, right? You want to make sure that whatever you're deploying, you're able to report that. You're not letting somebody go in and make the change. So it's reporting only mode. Right? So the baseline activity patterns, defined policies, etc. are defined there. You want to expand your ZTNA implementation. Right? So once the sufficient confidence is gained, you want to transition to steady state operations and accordingly expand the ZTNA implementation to include additional business processes. Right? NIST needs to emphasize that enterprises will be operating in a hybrid ZTA perimeter-based mode. So, Shilpa, if there are any questions, please put them here on this one, because this is important to understand the core components in terms of what needs to be done. Defining the protect surface, mapping how the traffic will move across your network, architect your network, create your policies, monitor and maintain the network, do the initial deployment and monitoring, and then you expand on your implementation. Why this is important? Because you're now trying to take a step-by-step approach to make sure you've validated that you have put the zero trust implementation strategy in place. So at the protocol level, right, zero trust emphasizes to have secure communication and data transfer. Let's talk about encryption. All the data in the transit needs to be encrypted using strong protocols. Obviously, TLS 1.3 being a strong protocol. You want to make sure that unauthorized access is prevented and confidentiality is ensured. Right? Then you want to make sure every access request is authenticated. Users and devices are verified before they can interact with resources. I don't know if some of you have encountered this or not. If you try to log in through a device which is not registered, it should challenge you. If the right authentication controls are put in place, then it will challenge you. Now, same thing with multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication will typically send you a OTP message to your registered device. It will not send it to you wherever you want it. If you're using your friend's phone, and if you say that, okay, send me one time multi-factor authentication, if it allows you, then it's a security hole. Because then you can, on a daily basis, you can switch the numbers, and that defeats the purpose of having a multi-factor authentication in place. The OTP is not your multi-factor authentication. Getting OTP to the right device makes your multi-factor authentication correct. Likewise with micro-segmentation. You want to divide your network into smaller, isolated segments, right? You want to make sure that not everybody is able to reach you on the network. Your attack surface needs to be restricted. You don't want to open it up so anybody and everybody can reach out to you. So micro-segmentation is put in place. At the policy level, we did it at the protocol level, now we do it at the policy level. You want to make sure that the controls are across the board, right? You want to make sure that the dynamic access policies are set up. Access is granted based on the real-time assessments of user identity, device health, location, and behavior. If anything looks suspicious, then there should be additional challenges which should be put in place, right? If somebody is trying to log in from the same identity, say from US and India at the same time, then technically you should be challenged that how is the same identity logging in from two different regions, or if not even same time. If it's just say 4 hours back, I logged in from US, and then 4 hours later my ID is logging from India, then I don't think any jet can get you from US to India in 4 hours, right? So there is obviously some problem. So that needs to be flagged. Device health. If the device is not patched correctly, it should flag it. And I'm not saying that your access policies will go into the device and validate, but if something is not right, if you're going through a jailbroken system, it should flag it, right? We already talked about location. So the identity and location. The example I gave you between US and India. Behavior, right? You're trying to you are never logging in every day at say 9 p.m. And all of a sudden, 3 days in a row, you try to access the system at 9 p.m. Then somebody needs to flag it. Somebody needs to say, okay, what's going on? Why is this person logging in at 9 p.m. every day? You don't take away their access, but you only grant them. Maybe you challenge them. Hey, you're logging in at 9 p.m., so I need to ask you an extra question, right? If somebody is out, if somebody comes to your home at 2 p.m., you're not going to call police. But if somebody comes to your home at 2 a.m., rings your doorbell, and is standing there, you might just end up calling police or security or somebody saying, hey, why is this person there at my home at 2 a.m.? If you know the person, it's understandable. If you don't know the person, you would question it, right? Why is somebody there at 2 a.m.? So it's the behavior. All these things, it's like giving access to your home, right? Somebody comes to your home at 2 a.m. Will you open the door for them? If you know the person, it's like you know the identity, you allow them. You know the device, know them. You know the location that yes, they live in your neighborhood, you allow them. But some of the things you will flag it, and when you flag it, you don't grant them the access. Same thing, right? Least privilege access. As I mentioned earlier, users need to be given the minimum level of access so that you're not even going into giving them the access which they don't need. A lot of times we give extra access and then we try to pull it back. That doesn't work this way, right? If you give more access, it's difficult to take it away, right? So we need to make sure that the access granted is on a least privilege basis. You only give access what is absolutely necessary, right? Just in time access, which is what you need to do. When somebody is wanting an access, you give them the access at that particular time. I'll give you an example. If you're trying to say, there are lots of people from India on this meeting, right? So I want to say if you're going and you want to access to go to the parliament. If you're going to the parliament and you have the right letters and everything to take you to the parliament, but you're not given a blanket access to go to parliament every day. If you need an access, if you're going as like your college tour, and you've been given an access, you have the letters, but when you go to the security point, they will validate that and they'll grant you the access. That's what you call it as just-in-time access. You are given it there. So permissions are only granted for the duration it is needed and with additional level of supervision. Continuous monitoring. Continuously monitoring the user activity and network traffic. Right? Why? Because you want to detect anomalies and potential threats. The example which we discussed about somebody logging in from US and 4 hours later logging in from India. If your monitoring was there, it will flag it. Right? You need to use analytics and machine learning to identify unusual patterns. Machine learning will help you automate some of these. So even if you're not there, it will automatically control the access. And now the third P, we're going at the platform level. So platform level, you're taking various measures to make sure you're granting zero trust network access. Right? So you're securing the remote access by verifying identity of the user, security posture of a device before granting access to specific resources. Right? And again, that needs to be validated. And why you need access? Just because you have the access doesn't mean you'll be granted the access. If there is any suspicious thing found, then you should be challenged. Say if your ID was used by a friend, right? If your friend said, "Oh, I want to go to the bathroom," and I forgot my badge. They borrowed your ID, badge, and they went to somewhere which they shouldn't have gone to, right? And this was flagged by your physical security team. So and they noted your account. So next time if you go there, they may see the ID and they may flag it saying, "Do you really need the access?" Right? Now, how many people can have access to the CEO's office? Right? CEO might say, "I have an open door policy," but that doesn't mean that anybody can go inside the office and look at things. Right? Open door means you come in when I'm there, and as long as you've validated yourselves, you've gone through the right protocol, you'll be able to come in. You've gone through the right policy, you'll be able to come in. You're using the right platform to come in. You'll be granted access provided your protocol, your policy, your platform permits you to get that level of access. We're talking about unified security framework, right? What do? It needs to have a cohesive security architecture, which will cover all organizational assets, including cloud, including on-prem, mobile. All the policies are consistently applied across all platforms. Let's take you're accessing Amazon as an example. When you're trying to access Amazon, you may be accessing Amazon from your laptop, from your iPad, iPhone, Android device, whatever it may be, right? Various systems you may be trying to access Amazon.com. Would the rules be separate if you are accessing from a phone versus a laptop? No, the rules need to be the same. So the policies need to be applied across all platforms, right? There is no thing such as there is a mobile Amazon policy and then there is a on-premise laptop having a different policy to access Amazon.com. It needs to be a unified framework which is allowing you to access things consistently across all platforms using the same types of policies, right? Zero Trust also encourages collaboration between different security tools and platforms to create a comprehensive defensive strategy. So what does that mean? You want to integrate your identity management, integrate your endpoint security, integrate your threat detection systems to improve your overall security posture. Having an end-to-end connectivity between your systems will allow you to have a clear view, clear vision into anything that is not set up correctly, right? Identity management, endpoint security, threat detection, all of them. Now, the things will get even worse when you are going across the critical infrastructure. You're going across the OT systems, right? That's where you'll have a lot more complexities which will get added to this. So, you need to make sure that whatever you are doing, you are putting a comprehensive strategy. You're having an end-to-end strategy. Your entire supply chain needs to be protected. You don't want to leave any holes in between, right? So that's the goal of putting an end-to-end zero trust policy in place. So zero trust will function at your protocol level, policy level, and platform level by enforcing strict verification, putting the adaptive access controls. Adaptive access controls will allow you to modify the access. If you flag something, it's not like once you give the access, you're giving it for life. you have to continuously monitor and make the adaptation in terms of the access controls. The security measures need to be comprehensive across all the assets. Right? This kind of approach will help organizations mitigate risks and respond effectively to the evolving cyber threats. Right? So, zero trust, in order to be successful, needs to function at protocol, policy, and platform level. All three of them. So, what are the core technical components of ZTNA? You have identity and access management, which means only authorized users can access. You have secure access service edge, which combines your networking and security into a single cloud-based service. You also call this as sometimes a secure gateway. So you would get a secure access regardless of user location. You are supposed to log into a secure access service edge or a secure gateway, which will authenticate you and allow you to go forward. Right? It takes away if you're coming in from a VPN, non-VPN, all those things. We had discussed earlier that because of ZTNA, VPN is becoming less and less important. Right? You need to make sure data loss prevention. If somebody is able to log in, and there should not be exfiltrate data. Right? I would say they should not be able to infiltrate or exfiltrate data without going through validation. Right? Otherwise, you can possibly go in and put some malware or something. You are able to go in and exfiltrate data, and that would mean unauthorized disclosures. Intentionally or unintentionally, you may be sending out data outside of the network. Security information and event management. It is due into your logging and monitoring, security information and event management, right? Because if you're trying to log into your security like a SIEM, anything like a Splunk or Sentinel or something, which allows you to aggregate and analyze your security logs, right? Continuous identity and device verification. Just because you said I have the access doesn't mean you have the access. You have to be validated every minute. What if you lost your job and you're still trying to log in? It has to be modified so that your access is immediately stopped. Or you had a change in job and your access went down. Then if you had a higher level of access, that needs to be taken away immediately. As I mentioned, location is important. You may be allowed to access certain things from Europe, but not Asia, or vice versa. And you need to verify, depending on where you're logging from, you should be stopped from accessing that environment. Device health. If the device is showing it is not healthy, it is not a patched device, right? Then it should be flagged, because you don't want somebody accessing from an unhealthy device, and that will create more security trouble for you. These components need to make sure they're working together to secure and grant the granular access to the applications and resources. Right? You want to ensure that secure and granular access to applications and resources is granted, and you're adapting to user and device behavior in real time. You found something even though somebody had the right access. Right? Let me go back to the analogy of the same thing. You granted somebody the access to the building, but when they come inside the building, you find them that they're carrying a knife with them, and the knife is not needed. Right? You ask them to throw the knife away, but they don't. Then will you grant them the access? No. Then you would say, okay, why are you not throwing the knife away? If you throw the knife away, fine. At least the threat has been taken out. Right? But if somebody does not throw the knife away, then you start suspecting, why do they want to take the knife with them? Somebody might say, okay, I want to take the knife so I can cut fruits. For cutting fruits, if the security has flagged you, cutting fruits is not the most important thing. Right? So, if there is a threat, you take that threat out. If they comply, no problem. It's clean. Test it again, validate it again, continuous monitoring, and they pass the test this time. Then let them go forward. Right? But if they miss it, if they insist, then it's a threat. Just giving a simple example, but think on those lines. Right? And that's the reason why these components have to be integrated. Your identity and access management needs to flag it. Right? The secure access service edge needs to allow or not allow you the access. You're coming in and taking, say, again, using the same analogy, somebody enters the building, they see few laptops, and they see few pen drives are connected to it, flash drives are connected to it. Somebody comes and takes out those pen drives, right? And walks away with that. That's your data loss, right? So that needs to be flagged. Security information and event management needs to capture it. Your laptop needs to say that, okay, somebody removed a pen drive from this device, and it needs to flag that. These are the types of things which you would do to ensure that your technical components of ZTNA are ensured. There is no compliance standard as such. Like NIST has published their own SP 800-207, which is for zero trust architecture, but typically it would needs to be adhering to all the standards. So it's not just about the standards, it's about the security components, right? We are looking at what needs to be secured. You're not looking at what standards or you're just adhering to, because if you're protecting for compliance versus you're protecting for protection is a different thing. If you're protecting for compliance, you're just checking the box that yes, I'm protected, but you're actually wanting to make sure. So it's more than just the compliance standards. I already discussed some key steps earlier about reducing your defining your protect surface and all that. So just follow those steps when it comes to key steps. Otherwise, it's a very broad question, so we need to possibly understand what exactly you need to do to implement a solution. Because implementing a solution is first identifying where the risk is coming from, right? If you order to do, like, what are the things which could fail, you need to know where the things could fail. Kind of doing like a threat modeling, where you're going through and defining that, okay, I want to put zero trust, this is where it can fail, this is where it can fail, this is my threat. So I need to protect those, I need to tighten those. So that would take care of defining it, that aspect. I think AI is implemented in everything these days, right? We have to be careful when you say that AI is doing that. You need to have a pattern in order for AI to work. You can automate the things that you know that can be automated. It means everyone's using AI sometimes very loosely. So you need to know where AI can come in and help you tighten those things. So AI will definitely play a part, but what part it will play will differ from an implementation to implementation. There are the majority models of security which can actually measure the zero trust maturity as well. The zero trust maturity models also being put in place where every step of the way is analyzed. But again, it also comes down to how much are you locking it down? How much are you willing to, means, are you ready to play the tough cop to make sure that nobody has the access, right? Is your home open to everyone, or are you only allowing access based on the validation and verification? That's when you open up your home to people, right? That's a question we need to ask. Every person, every enterprise is different. Some people want people to come in because they think they could be potential customers, and some people may say that, you know what, I don't want anyone and everyone entering without permission. Let's use again the analogy of if you're going to a religious place, right? Be it a temple, be it a mosque, be it a church. The entry requirements a lot less restricted in those places than if you are going to a parliament building or a White House or something. Not anybody can enter, right? So depending on the asset you're trying to access, that's how it will determine what your access criteria is. Again, like I said, things are not done at the compliance level. I think some of you are thinking only zero trust is needed for compliance, which is not the case. Zero trust is needed for security, not for compliance. Too difficult to know. Different technologies are coming again. ZTNA is more of a framework. So you cannot say that there will be alternative, there might be more. Maybe someone like NIST will help define that, but maybe things would have changed. So again, it's a principle, it's a framework. Frameworks don't have too many alternatives. You have to possibly start using more. So that's why I just want to make sure that we're not treating this as it's another like a product or a service which will go away in 10 years.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question to you is, if ZTNA only rechecks trust or network changes, what hidden flaw does this expose in the policy engine's continuous verification design?
Sorry, could you read out this question again?
Yeah. If ZTNA only rechecks trust on network changes, what hidden flaw does this expose in the policy engine's continuous verification design?
ZTNA doesn't expose only on the network changes. ZTNA exposes on, if it's set up correctly, it could be on device change, it could be on network change, it could be on application workload change, it could be on identity change. So it's not like it's only taking the network changes into effect. Adaptive part, it's easier to do it on a network, but also location, also device. So it's not true that it's only doing it on the network. So that's why I think we need to put changes in a holistic manner, as I mentioned earlier. Traditional perimeter security was you define the perimeter, you try to protect it, right? Zero trust is more about a mindset, right? That once you entered the perimeter, you could have something which you may have already gone and put it on a different day. You may already be hiding something. You may be using something to cause disruption, which may already be hidden, right? So that's the reason I want to make sure that you are protecting based on the overall security posture. You're not doing it based on just like somebody entered the perimeter and you protected them once, right? So it's not like you buy a product and you're putting it in, right? It has to be a continuous mindset. It has to be a change in the architecture. It has to be implemented. That's why it says that it's not something that you do it like you decide that today I want to put ZTNA. You have to put this in a gradual manner. You have to do this in a manner so that it is progressively done. So there are lots of legacy systems which challenges that legacy systems will bring, because legacy systems are not designed for the the futuristic advancements. So yes, you might have to add a step or two to make them feel comfortable to be a part of this current new architecture. Those challenges cannot be mitigated immediately without disrupting operations because you need to make adjustments, and those adjustments may come in with some disruptions, right? Because it's not like you take a legacy system, you take that out and you replace it with the new system, right? It is going to be an adjustment that you need to make that legacy system compatible with the new architecture so that it may require some changes. So I would say there is no one size that will fit all, but there will be adjustments which will need to be made so that that legacy system is ready to handle zero trust framework. But again, what people are confusing is it's the architecture, it's the mindset, it's what you have, right? Some of our oldest systems have a lot of very strong controls already put in place. So, like some of the older castles and the palaces and all that had been designed with a lot of security measures in place, which we don't realize, right? So it's not like legacy systems don't have something. Legacy systems have their own ways of protecting. It's just that you have to make sure they are ready to be put into the new zero trust architecture framework. There is nothing about smaller companies or bigger companies, right? It's more about the mindset. Are you protecting your entire supply chain? Are you protecting every step of the way? It's not like you're saying I'm a smaller company, maybe you have less components in there, so you have less to protect. Larger companies may deal with a lot more overhead. So we just want to make sure that whatever we are putting, you're following the framework and not going by size of the company or anything of that sort. I said approach zero trust as a framework. I've talked in the previous times too. Don't think about that you can go walk into a store, buy a product, and come back and say I'm zero trust compliant. No, it's a mindset. You need to think what you're trying to do. Think about if you're protecting your home, you have to protect in every single way, right? From the doors, from the windows, from the people who visit your home, all of this, from the packages that come to your home, are they validated? Right? If somebody sends you an email, um, you have to, before you open the attachment, you have to validate, right? So these are the basic. It's a mindset. Zero trust is a mindset which you need to implement. It's not a product. It's it's the way of life that you're implementing.